through the Tosafot and the Shulchan Aruch on our sugya. Tosafot and Shulchan Aruch are trying to figure out, we have this machloket between Rav Shimon ben Gamliel and the Chachamim about Yuhara in two specific cases. One where a Chatan wants to say Kriyat Shema on his wedding night, and the other one where someone wants to stay home from work on Tisha B'Av. And they're each, Tosafot and Shulchan Aruch, are going to give us the practical halacha of who do we follow and what are we supposed to do. So if you look at the Tosafot here on Yud Zayin Amud Bet, Rav Shisha Bereid Rav Idi Amar Lo Olam Lo Tachlif. This is a different part of the Gemara that came before this, but Tosafot mentions Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, who was one of the opinions in our machloket about the groom who wants to say Kriyat Shema. V'halacha Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Amar Lo Kol Harotza Litol Hashem Yitol. And the halacha follows like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, who says that not anyone who wants to take God's name by saying Shema on the wedding night can take it. Right? So it seems like we follow, according to Tosfot saying that we follow Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. And then if you skip ahead toward the end, V'chein pasak Rabbeinu Chananel, and Rabbeinu Chananel agrees that we side with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel in this machloket. Umihu, and nevertheless, Anu shebashum pa'am ein anu mikavnim hetev. We, right, meaning us nowadays, in the times much later than the Gemara, Tosfot is writing this in the medieval times, so we now, who are never able to actually have proper kavana, have proper intention when we are saying Shema, gam chatan yesh likrot. Since we today, nowadays, right, in medieval times, or basically any time past the Mishnah and the Gemara, since nowadays we don't actually have proper kavana at all when we say Shema, therefore, a groom should also say Shema on his wedding night. Meaning that this whole halacha, this whole discussion that the Gemara is having about whether or not a groom is allowed to say Shema on his wedding night because he's exempt, that exemption actually doesn't really apply anymore because of the way that we say Kriyat Shema nowadays. De'adraba, because on the contrary, nir'eh ki yuhara im lo yikra, it's going to look like religious arrogance if the groom does not say Kriyat Shema. If the groom says, tonight is my wedding night, and therefore I'm exempt from Kriyat Shema, so I'm not going to say it, that's what's going to look religiously arrogant. Why? Kilomar, ani mechavin b'chol sha'a, ani mechavin b'chol sha'a. So if the groom doesn't say Kriyat Shema on his wedding night, it's going to look like he's implying that every other night, that's not his wedding night, he's able to have the proper kavanah. But now that it's his wedding night, now he can't have proper kavanah. Tosfot is pointing out that the kind of kavanah that we have nowadays, post-Mishnah Gemara times, doesn't actually hit the mark of what real kavanah means. We kind of have all lost what having kavanah really, truly, deeply means. So nowadays, this exemption from saying Kriyat Shema, practically, it doesn't actually apply to anyone because nobody has actual proper full-on kavanah. What we call kavanah today is not actually the kind of kavanah that the Mishnah and the Gemara were talking about when it said that you need to have kavanah during Kriyat Shema. And then Tosfot ends, Afal la'asot malacha b'tisha b'av, ein la'asot malacha. Right? But in the case where the person wants to, stay home from work on Tisha B'Av, even though everyone else in their community does go to work, there you should follow Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and there you can still stay home from work and on Tisha B'Av, even though it goes against what your community is doing, because like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel explained in the Gemara that we learned, we have other explanations, right? We can just say, oh, maybe this person is out of work, right? He's unemployed. Okay, so that's Tosafot. All right, so again, who do we paskin like according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? Do we paskin like Rabbanan or Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? So Tosafot says we paskin like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, and Tosafot actually adds in there, right, that the reason why we know that we follow Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is very simply dehu batra'a, that he comes later. His opinion, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion, in the Mishnah is listed second. So we have a general rule in Mishnayot that if you have two opinions, the person who kind of gets the last word in is usually the default person who wins the argument. If there's no response to that person in the Mishnah or the Gemara, then usually that's the side that wins the argument. Okay, Now, we also discussed what's the psak for saying Kriyat Shema on the wedding night and why, right? On your wedding night, practically nowadays, you really should say Kriyat Shema because otherwise it's actually going to look religiously arrogant to not say Kriyat Shema. Why would that look religiously arrogant? Because if you don't say Shema, you're implying that you, as a person who lives in the post-Mishnah Gemara era, you are someone who usually can achieve this crazy, really intense level of intention. By not saying it on your wedding night, you're kind of gloating, right? You have this like conceited view of yourself that you're able to reach that level of intention, of kavana. But really, nowadays, nobody reaches that level of intention. So everyone should just assume that whatever level of intention that we call kavana nowadays is not actually, right, the real kind of kavana that we're supposed to be striving for Shema. Therefore, everyone should just say Shema every night, including a groom. All right. Now, Shulchan Aruch gives us a similar psak. So hakonis at tapatula pater mikriyat Shema gimel yamim im lo asa ma'aseh mibnei shehu tarud tirdat mitzvah. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch is giving us the laws of right, the wedding night. So someone who marries a virgin, right, that was just kind of reflective of typically what would happen, right, most marriages, but obviously, right, well, actually we'll come back to this in class, right? So someone who marries a virgin is exempt from saying Kriyat Shema for 3 days if they did not consummate the marriage, if they didn't do the deed, because the groom is involved with a mitzvah. But here Shulchan Aruch adds this important caveat. V'hani mile bizman harishonim. But these words only applied in the times of the Rishonim, right? And here Rishonim is actually probably referring to like what Tosfot said, not what we call the Rishonim now, but really the Amoraim and Tanaim, right? The people, the rabbis of the Mishnah, the Gemara. Aval achshav shegam sha'ar b'nei adam ina mikavnim kira'oi. But now, since most people, right, almost everyone is not actually able to have the proper kavana, therefore, you should also, right, you should just say Shema on your wedding night, because again, no one can actually achieve this high level of kavana that the Mishnah and the Gemara was referring to.